A warning tonight from two local experts who say Corpus Christi is behind on preparations to handle large amounts of oil coming here from other parts of the state for export to other countries. Our Brian Burns explains the potential problem and what it could mean for local industries. Brian?
Well, Joe, the warnings center on the lack of improvements that will allow greater and greater volumes of oil to back up as production is increased in the Eagle Ford Shale and new pipelines from the Permian Basin. Benjamin Salsbury is director of Wayfinder Analytics, which has released a study showing that Corpus Christi is poised to become a premier U.S. export hub as crude production in the Permian Basin and Eagle Ford accelerates.
Corpus Christi region is set up to become the U.S. Basically a global hub for crude oil exports.
Salsbury says the report found that over the next 5 years, the supply of oil will grow by 80%. That could mean billions lost by the industry if Texas and local infrastructure isn't improved.
It's happening most recently in the Permian, where we don't have the ability to get the oil to the markets in Cushing or the refiners on the Gulf Coast. When you look at the price consequences of those bottlenecks, you have not only a loss of barrels that can't be shipped, and the associated lost revenue, you actually have shut-in production where people drill fewer wells, hire fewer crews. So for the Permian region alone, a bottleneck of that magnitude could be $51 billion.
Meanwhile, Texas A&M Corpus Christi economics professor Dr. Jim Lee says this area is already behind on infrastructure, which could cause a bottleneck that will drive depressed oil prices even lower in the area.
I mean, obviously, if we can export, there's not much to lose, but then this is going to continue to depress oil prices. And obviously, gas will stay at the $2 level, for the next at least 2 years. So, I mean, it might be good for drivers and consumers, but definitely not good for Texas, not good for Corpus Christi.
Officials with the port agree, and we reached Port Board Chairman Charlie Zahn in Austin, where port officials are asking for support from state and federal officials to help with infrastructure upgrades.
Is twofold. One is to deepen and widen our ship channel to accommodate the larger vessels that are going to transport that crude, and the second is to build a terminal capable of docking and facilitating the DLCCs that are going to come, very large crude carriers that are going to come into the coastal bend.
Zahn says the new harbor bridge is an infrastructure improvement, and 3 new oil pipelines will be built from the Permian Basin to the coastal bend. The first of those should be complete in about 18 months, and Zahn hopes some of the export upgrades will be ready for as much as 3.3 million barrels a day leaving Corpus Christi. Now, Zahn also told me that plans for new pipelines to Texas from other oil hubs have been announced this week, including one from Cushing, Oklahoma, and another from the Dakotas. Mackenzie?
Okay, thank you, Brian.